Hi Seals, welcome back. Happy Monday. Hope you had a lovely long bank holiday weekend. If you didn't manage to read the story or listen to the story, from Friday, it's on our class website or it's on the YouTube channel. Okay, I still did one on Friday, so if you haven't managed to look at that one, you can go back and have a look. So we're on chapter 20, and it's called The Absolute Safest Books You Can Travel Into. Okay, so we just found out that Chalk shouldn't have actually been in the books with with Tilly. He shouldn't have been there. So Amelia, the librarian, wasn't too happy about it that she was actually there. Okay, so Grandad, Amelia, Tilly and Oscar walked back into the main hall, which was still a flurry of activity. The librarian came up to Amelia and talked quietly into her ear. Tilly pressed close to Grandad, trying to hear what the woman was saying, but she couldn't make it out. "Thanks, Maddie," was all Amelia said in response, and the other librarian peeled off from their group as Amelia led them to a grand staircase in the middle of one of the long walls. The steps were made of marble and had ornate copper banisters leading up all 5 floors. They trooped up several flights of steps and emerged on the 4th floor, which was lined with tall shelves of books. One end opened out onto the hall, where some of the boxes of books Tilly and Oscar had seen being loaded downstairs were sliding onto a pulley system and being emptied by 2 librarians. The other end was lined with mirrors, making the room like it stretched out endlessly. There were several upright burgundy leather chairs surrounding an oval wooden table, which had a brass and green glass lamp at its centre. A very neatly dressed man who wore his cardigan with a white shirt and bow tie came to greet them. "Miss Whisper, a pleasure," he said, pushing the bridge of his black glasses further up his nose and bobbing his head in a bow of sorts. "Are these our new book wanderers?" "Hi, Seb, yes. Sorry for the lack of notice, but do you have time for an induction, even if it's just the abridged version? This is Oscar Rue, and this is Matilda Pages, and this is her grandfather, Archie Pages." Seb started at Grandad's name, but quickly composed himself and held out his hand to Grandad, who shook it firmly. "Good to meet you, sir, and thrilled to have you among our ranks, Oscar and Tilly. Happy to fit you in for an induction, of course. You've saved me from my cataloguing. Take a seat." He gestured to the leather armchairs and table. "Do you need us to stay, Seb?" Amelia asked. "Archie and I have a lot to catch up on if you can spare us." "Oh, we'll be absolutely fine here," Seb replied. "I'll get one of the others to come and get you when we're finished. I imagine these 2 are naturals anyway." "Thanks, Seb," Amelia said, touching Grandad's elbow gently to motion him to leave. Tilly looked at him, feeling a little panicked by how quickly everything had escalated over the last few hours. "You're safe here, Tilly," Grandad reassured her. Seb can come and get me if you need anything at all, and I'll just be downstairs in Amelia's office. Have fun. Listen carefully." When Grandad and Amelia had left, Seb sat down with Oscar and Tilly at the wooden table, smiling encouragingly. "So, when did you chaps first realise you could book wander?" he asked, smoothing his cardigan down. "Well, Anne, from Anne of Green Gables, first appeared in the bookshop last week, but we only found out it was called Book Wandering about an hour ago," Tilly said. "Goodness, rather a baptism of fire, as the saying goes," Seb said, smiling. "Nothing to worry about. We can take things nice and steady. We don't need to run before we can walk. I'm here to answer all your questions and let you practice in a safe, controlled environment. Is there anything you want to know before we start? I'm unsure of what you've already been told." Tilly and Oscar sat in stunned silence for a moment, wondering where to begin. "How come I never saw any characters in the real world, but I could follow Tilly into Anne of Green Gables?" Oscar asked. Seb looked startled. "You followed Tilly into a book? Are you sure? I've only heard of that happening once in a blue moon." "Yes, Anne took us both in at the same time, even though I couldn't see her in the shop, and we all appeared. Okay, actually I have a new question," Oscar interrupted his own train of thought. "Are we talking about magic here?" Seb smiled again. "In short, yes, we are talking about book magic. Book wandering is, at its core, the magic of books, and imagination pushed to its limit, and then tipped over a little bit further. There are millions of readers across the world and throughout time who have loved books, who can vividly imagine their favourite scenes and characters, who have real and important relationships with books. But there are only a handful of us who can wonder. I'm afraid there aren't any spells or magic words, and limited numbers of dragons and witches, but we are definitely dealing with magic. I figured, Oscar said. You seem very relaxed about all of this, Tilly said. She did not feel relaxed about anything she had learned over the last hour or so. Well, now it's happened, I'm glad to have some explanations for it, you know, Oscar said. It would be way worse if no one had been able to tell us what was going on, right? I guess so, Tilly said, unconvinced. Hang on, can we just go back to you saying there were a limited number of dragons and witches? Why aren't there no dragons and witches? Well, if you visit a book with dragons and witches, you will encounter dragons and witches in the book, Seb said. A key part of what I need you to understand is that the things you come across in books are very real if you are inside a book. A dragon is a dragon is a dragon. Some books are more dangerous than others. In fact, that's part of the reason we use these books for practicing, he said, dropping a pile of slim, colourful books on the table. We're going to start with the basics. It's vital you learn how to control when you book wander and how to get in and out when you want. You should hear some of the ancient librarian stories about people getting stuck. He tailed off and swallowed awkwardly. But we have the Archie visits if things go really wrong. The Archie visits, Tilly repeated. They're sort of like the United Nations of book wandering. Every country has its own underlibrary, but then above them there are the Archie visits. I've never seen them, and I believe the archive itself moves locations, but theoretically, they're brought in if things get out of hand. Honestly, I sometimes wonder if they're a bit of an old wives' tale themselves. No one here has ever had to deal with them as far as I know anyway. He pushed the books towards them. Tilly picked one up. Things we like, she read from the front cover. Oscar picked another one. Play with us, he read. These look like the books we had in primary school, the ones we learned to read from. That's exactly what they are, Seb said. These are the absolute safest books you can travel into. He took Play With Us from Oscar and handed it to Tilly. Okay, Tilly, you're going to go first. Your book wandering seems to be slightly more typical so far. Oscar grimaced. Don't worry, we'll get you sorted out, Seb reassured him. Okay, the primary rule of book wandering is that you must keep the copy of the book with you when you travel. But I didn't have a book with me when I went to Alice in Wonderland or Queen of Gables, Tilly interrupted. You were with a character from the book. Characters can take you in and bring you out. And in fact, we find that if you book wander with a character, they have a lot more control than if you wander in by yourself. If you do wander in by yourself, characters will believe you to be part of the story, even if your presence is quite inexplicable. They may wonder why you're in a particular place, but they won't question your fundamental existence. They may wonder why you are in a particular place, but they won't question your fundamental existence. But if a character pulls you into their story, like Anne did to you from Pages & Co., they will remember where you are really from. Anne knew that you and Oscar weren't part of her book, did she not? But nobody else did. Tilly nodded. We actually discourage that style of travel as you are reliant on the character to get you out again, and it's not always obvious without a tracking stamp which copy of the book you're in. Oh, Tilly said, her face scrunching in sadness. Does that mean Anne wouldn't remember me if I went into Green Gables by myself? I'm afraid not, Seb said, but we don't have much time, so shall we begin? He leaned across the table and flipped through the opening pages, which were glossaries of vocabulary, and onto the first page, which was a drawing of a boy holding a basketball with the word Peter on the opposite page. So, first of all, I'm going to ask you to read the whole book. It will only take you a few minutes. You can book wander without doing this first, but it will get your imagination into gear, and the better you know a story, the safer you'll be inside. Oscar, you may as well read the other one too at the same time. Kill two birds with one stone and all. Just read as you normally would. Tilly and Oscar exchanged a sceptical glance, but Seb nodded them on, so they turned to their books. It took them only 2 or 3 minutes to read them. They were so simple and short. The two of them looked up at Seb. When you read yourself into a book, you read yourself into a specific moment. If you start at the start, you will travel to the start. You have control over where you visit. You should never travel to within 10 pages of the end of a book. Why not? Oscar asked. Endings are unpredictable, Seb explained. It is possible to visit the end of a book, in fact. Many have tried in order to visit their favourite battles or weddings or deaths, but you need to be poised to return at the snap of a finger, and until you are much more experienced, we would not want you to risk it. Why is it more dangerous? What happens? Tilly asked. If you don't time it just right, you can rather get stuck in the end papers, Seb said. Sorry, what are M papers? Oscar asked. No need to apologise, Seb said. Lowercase M papers are the leaves at the very beginning and end of a book, sometimes stuck to the inside of the cover. Uppercase M papers are the negative matter at the end of books that acts as a sort of cushion to bounce characters back if something goes wrong, so we can find them and put them back into their stories. It's a safety net for characters, not for readers. It's a theoretical nothing space for readers. The story has ended, but you're still in the book, and it can be very tricky to get back from there. The usual rules don't apply. There are a lot of rules to remember, Oscar muttered. There are a lot of risks, said Seb. Remember, this isn't a game, Oscar. We're trying to keep you safe. Okay, pay attention. This bit is important. Seb went on, straightening his glasses. To get back out of a book, you must reread the last line from the same copy of the same book. And we won't get stuck in the end papers that way, Tilly asked. An excellent question, Tilly, but no, Seb replied. If you read the last line, it's as if you're inserting your own full stop or typing the end. It works like a command and instruction. The end papers are where you'll wind up if you're wandering near the end of a book and you let it finish without you leaving. But there's nothing to worry about. Just make sure you stick to reading the last line and you'll be fine. A book will return you safely to whichever bookshop or library you read yourself in from. But what happens if you're reading at home? Oscar said. Will it take you home? Book wandering is only possible in bookshops and libraries in our experience. It just doesn't seem to work unless you're in a book of some kind. You need the potency of all the different book worlds brought together in one space. Seb sat back with a dreamy look on his face. You know when you walk into a bookshop and you see all thousands of books lined up in front of you? That intoxicating feeling of knowing that behind each cover is a different world to explore, like thousands of tiny portals. That adrenaline rush just before you open a new book. The thrill of being surrounded by fellow book lovers. That is what fuels book wandering, and it comes to life in bookshops. Okay, so there are a lot of rules to remember when you go book wandering, isn't there? I'm not sure I would remember all those rules. Do you think you would remember them all? So they need to make sure to get out of a book, they have to reread the last line from the same copy of the same book. So they have to, when they go book wandering, they have to take the copy of their book with them and reread the last line to get them out of that book. So I'm sure, I have a feeling Oscar and Tilly might get a bit stuck and a bit confused with those rules, don't you? See how we get on. Okay, I hope you have a lovely week. And if you have any questions or you want to tell me your predictions or anything like that, then just let me know. Bye.